My husband left me alone when I was bleeding internally. Last Saturday night, I had severe pain in the lower right side of my abdomen, so bad that I considered going to the ER, but I have a bit of a hospital phobia and ER visits are expensive. By the next morning, the pain had eased a little. So I brushed it off, thinking I might have pulled a muscle. 2 days later, I noticed massive purple bruises near the painful area, which freaked me out. I went to my OB/GYN first to check if my IUD had shifted or if an ovarian cyst had ruptured, but everything was fine on that end. She then sent me to my primary care doctor, who, after a painful examination, was concerned it might be appendicitis. She even called ahead to the ER to let them know I was coming. After several scans and tests, it turned out I had a rectus sheath hematoma, a tear in my abdominal wall that had been bleeding internally, causing the bruising. I went to the ER about 11:30 to noon on Friday and spent the next 10-ish hours there before a room opened up for me and I was admitted. They weren't sure if I was going to need surgery to correct it. And no one had any idea what caused this, so the concern of more/other internal bleeding was big. My husband, 49M, was at work at the time. My husband picked up my 7 years old from school at 3 p.m. and went home. His mom is retired, alone. Husband passed April 2024 and loves to spend time with the kids. I also have a 23F, but he didn't ask her to pick up our son or watch him so my husband could sit with me. He waited until 7:30 p.m. to bring me food in the ER. I hadn't eaten all day because I was fasting to do blood work at my primary care appointment. Stayed with me for about 30 minutes and went home again. At that point, I still wasn't sure if I needed surgery, so I couldn't eat or drink anything after midnight. The next day, I didn't see him until after my food/drink intake was permitted again, so about 11:30 a.m. or so. My hospital lunch was delivered about 20 minutes after he arrived, and he left after my doctor gave his update. He missed the oncologist and hematologist though. I had to deal with that terrifying prospect alone. My mom passed of leukemia when I was 15. He wasn't very happy with the doctor, which I totally get. The doc was really off-putting and borderline unprofessional, asking if my husband hit me to both of us in the same room, after being asked this exact question at least 20 times. By several different hospital staff prior to this, I was even asked if there was anyone I wanted to restrict from the hospital and said no, but he kept harping on it and was visibly angry, but he insisted he wasn't mad at me. I get that it was offensive, but I didn't understand why that took precedence over what was going on with my health and mental well-being. This was my first time being a patient in a hospital, besides when my 2 kids were born. And my prior experience with hospitals was anything but pleasant. Between my mom's cancer and daughter's medical issues from birth until age 12, I spent way too much time there already. He kept bringing the doctor's comment up, then complained that the chaplain came by after me saying I didn't want the chaplain. I'm pagan. Freaked him out a bit when he came by, but that's another story. Then got mad about the amount the hospital was charging the insurance company, not what they were charging us, what they charged the insurance. I felt like the whole time I was there, all he did was act upset and angry, and though he kept saying he wasn't mad at me, I felt like it was all about him and his feelings. I finally got to drive myself home from the hospital about 3:30 p.m. on Monday, so it was almost 4 days in the hospital. My husband came 3 of the 4 days and stayed about 20 to 30 minutes each day. He's off weekends, by the way. And missed every doctor except that one. When I got home, I got a shower to wash off the stink of disinfectant, and then it was straight back to normal, as though I had never been gone. My son gave me a hug and then ran off. Fine, he's 7. My husband played video games until dinner, then ate and helped with some of the dishes. No, let me do that, you're not supposed to be exerting yourself. Or, sit down and I'll take care of dinner. You just got out of the hospital. Nothing. I'm worried about my future. Is this a picture of what my life may be like in the future? Cancer is rampant in both sides of my family, all kinds, so I guess that means I'll be doing chemo alone and probably going to die alone in a hospital bed at some point. I'm trying to move forward, but I also feel some resentment towards him. Whatever happened to, in sickness and in health, I can't help but feel let down by him. I was all alone in a scary place, not knowing what was wrong or what was going to happen to me, and he couldn't be bothered to come sit with me, keep me company, help stop my freakouts or support me. Not once did he tell me, "It's okay, you'll be okay, we'll get through this." Instead, it seemed like it was all about his frustrations and feelings. So now I'm conflicted. Maybe I was being selfish. It's not like he could actually do anything to help me there, and he was with our son. But where do you draw the line between selfishness and need for help? AATA for wanting my husband to be more supportive during my time in the hospital. Update. Wow. I really didn't think I'd get more than a couple comments, but I really appreciate everyone who took the time to comment. I'm going to try to reply to comments tomorrow, because I admit I was overwhelmed by the amount of responses, and I was also trying to work at the same time. I really appreciate all the feedback, even those who called me the a-hole, because many of you were right. I should have been more clear about my needs and feelings. Shout out to Thestral Breeder for helping with verbiage to use when I talk with my husband. I've worked call centers all my life and know the difference between I statements and you statements, but in the moment and personal life, it's hard. I've replaced the periods with commas and added spacing between paragraphs. Here's the revised text. Edit to clarify a few points that keep coming up. 1. I saw the surgeon Friday afternoon, and he restricted my food/drink starting at midnight that night and lasting until I got my second CT scan the next day, around mid-morning, to confirm my hematoma wasn't seeping or getting bigger. 2. No, I didn't specifically ask him to stay, and yes, that's my bad. I was in a lot of pain, and I didn't want to deal with him rolling his eyes at me and saying, "Fine, I guess I'll stay," in an irritated and put-out tone. 'Cause then I wouldn't have wanted him to stay. He would just have had a negative attitude that I didn't want to deal with at the time. Yes, he's done this before with other things, just nothing as serious. 3. My daughter is 23, but has some development delays and doesn't pick up on cues very well. I know I'm making some excuses for her, but she was the last one to see her grandpa in the hospital before he passed, and it really impacted her. Last year we lost my dad, my husband's stepdad, and her dog, who she loved and doted on like a kid. She's petrified of loss at this point, and I am her rock. I also have to admit, I'm not used to leaning on my kids in any way. 4. My husband did not, nor has he ever hit me. I didn't fall, have an accident, or have any physical trauma. I totally get why the doctors asked me about abuse. Though I didn't realize until today that asking in front of the potential abuser was another tactic to find out the truth. I do get that. 5. Yes, this is a pattern. He repeatedly has stated his opinions as facts. He is not a very empathetic person, and we have been working on that. I try telling him that not everyone thinks or feels exactly like he does. And his opinion isn't fact or gospel truth. He also doesn't really believe in therapy or mental health issues. I have severe depression, general anxiety, and borderline OCD. According to my shrink, I'm not a doctor. And his reaction to me telling him I'm depressed was, well, I get sad sometimes too. 6. He loves his son. He and my daughter have a somewhat complicated relationship since they butt heads a lot, but he's been a way better father figure than my ex, so much more involved in her life, and adopted her as an adult. Her bio dad wouldn't agree to the adoption prior, even though he wouldn't even talk to my daughter. 7. When I gave birth to our son, he was there while I was in labor, and there through the entire birth process. However, once we were out of the labor and delivery area and in a private room, he just assumed he would go back home and see me sometime the next day. I had to convince him to stay with my son and I for the next couple of days in the hospital. Update March 15th, 2025. For those interested enough to want to follow up, here goes, and please, if possible, be kind. I've got a lot on my head right now. So I finally talked to my husband about my hospital stay, and it didn't go well. Admittedly, I didn't pick the best time to talk and said things in anger. I wouldn't take back anything I said, and I wasn't mean or cruel in how I delivered it. But I wish I had picked a better time so that he was in a better mindset to receive the info. We were talking about an upcoming medical appointment for my daughter, and I said that we'd be leaving at X time the next day. His response, "You're taking her? Don't you have to work?" Yes, I do. So I'm going to have to call in absent because she is getting meds that won't allow her to drive home, and this is a traumatic experience, so she needs support. We already asked her bestie and her grandma. Both have non-cancelable things going on. Well, I can take her. Me, really? It could take all day. You're cool with that? Ranting for a while about how she can just get dropped off. She's an adult, and it's her problem. Me, again. I am totally admitting this was not the best way to bring to these topics, yes, because not only will she need a ride home, but she needs the support. Like I needed support in the hospital, but you weren't there. I had to do it alone. What was I supposed to do? Just SIT there? Me, no, you could have reassured me. You could have held my hand so I wasn't freaking out so much, or just talked to me so my thoughts didn't spiral. What if I had bled out and they needed consent to operate? You weren't there to give it. Instead, you were there 20 to 30 minutes at most and pissed every visit. Some people need emotional support. Well, admittedly, I didn't pick the best time to talk and said things in anger. I wouldn't take back anything I said, and I wasn't mean or cruel in how I delivered it. But I wish I had picked a better time so that he was in a better mindset to receive the info. We were talking about an upcoming medical appointment for my daughter, and I said that we'd be leaving at X time the next day. His response, "You're taking her? Don't you have to work?" Yes, I do. So I'm going to have to call in absent because she is getting meds that won't allow her to drive home, and this is a traumatic experience, so she needs support. We already asked her bestie and her grandma. Both have non-cancelable things going on. Well, I can take her. Me, really? It could take all day. You're cool with that? Ranting for a while about how she can just get dropped off. She's an adult, and it's her problem. Me, again. I am totally admitting this was not the best way to bring to these topics, yes, because not only will she need a ride home, but she needs the support. Like I needed support in the hospital, but you weren't there. I had to do it alone. What was I supposed to do? Just SIT there? Me, no, you could have reassured me. You could have held my hand so I wasn't freaking out so much, or just talked to me so my thoughts didn't spiral. What if I had bled out and they needed consent to operate? You weren't there to give it. Instead, you were there 20 to 30 minutes at most and pissed every visit. Some people need emotional support. Scoffs. Me, well, at least I know what to expect for the future. I'll be going to chemo appointments alone, sitting in my hospital bed/nursing home, alone and dying alone, 'cause being there for me or anyone inconveniences you. A bunch of childish BS, okay? S and whatever S, then proceeds to act like nothing happened and immediately fall asleep, even though I have visibly red/puffy eyes from crying. Unfortunately, divorce isn't really an option for me financially or logistically. I can't unroot my kids. Yes, my daughter is 23, but with her current job and housing costs in my area, there's no way she can afford her own place. And my son has great connections in our neighborhood. My only viable plan to go would be to move to the other side of the country because that's where my only support is. I'd have to quit my job, pull my kid out of school, and move, if courts would even allow it. So until my son reaches an appropriate age, I'm staying with the expectation that I don't have a husband. I have a roommate with occasional benefits. I'm changing my will and my POA to my sister, but that's the most I can do at this time. For additional clarity, my mom passed away when I was 16, and dad passed away last January, though we weren't close at the time. For my biological family, I talked to one sister and my paternal aunt, otherwise I'm an orphan. I'm fairly close with my ML, enough to the point where she commiserates with me about my husband's behavior. He's a lot like his dad, who she divorced years ago. Lastly, for anyone who wants a medical update, I've got an appointment with the hematologist/oncologist coming up, but it'll be a while. The worst of my bruises are finally fading and the rest are gone completely. I'm feeling better every day, but if I move too fast or clench my abdominal muscles, I get a nasty pinch. I keep forgetting to take it easy with lifting and bending, but it's not bad. Mild enough that an ice pack and a couple ibuprofen take care of the worst of it. Luckily, my job has been amazing, and letting me work from home even on in-office days. They really have been super caring and supportive. So again, thank you to everyone who commented or DM'd me. It really helped me to see past my husband's callous reaction and that it wasn't an unreasonable request to ask him to stay with me. It's been an eye-opening experience, and honestly, I'm really sad that after all these years, I can't count on my partner.